Hi, this is Lisa from Monarch Butterfly Land Saving Society. In this video, I want to talk about my study so far on how the best ways are to avoid desertification on the earth, which we believe at my charity, Monarch Butterfly Land Saving Society, causes a huge amount of global warming and depletion of food and all kinds of sustenance that people need, from fresh water to energy to oxygen to our livelihoods, from the products that are produced to the food needed by animals and the sustenance of all life in terms of replenishment of natural resources of the earth. That's why we believe very strongly in opposing desertification and studying it, and opposing deforestation, which we feel is leading to desertification. The clearing of the forests for farmlands and growing of foods, in the end, is really not sustaining us with anything at all. It may give us food in the short term, but in the long term, it takes away all of the items I've mentioned that are so important to life of all the sustenance of all life on the planet. When I looked into desertification and deforestation, I saw that in the 1800s, the British government, or maybe even earlier, began a program, what they call afforestation, which is planting trees and building forests in areas maybe where forests were not existing. I don't know if those were areas that originally had forests, maybe many, many centuries ago, that they reforested, or if they were areas that were not places where forests grew, and they took on a program of what they call afforestation, starting a forest. It was a unique idea that there was a man-made forest concept. It started, I think, with the fox hunt in England, and they would obviously go on hunts, and also the hunting the bird shooting contests they had. I think when they depleted their own forests, they then would stock them up and rebuild them. So they took on a program, maybe through just their natural culture and activities, of depleting and then restocking their forests. From that, I think they began a study of forests, and then they started through when they were in the colonial periods, going to different lands, they were planting forests. They planted forests in Scotland, in Iceland, in Cyprus, and in Palestine. So I studied a little bit of what their success was with planting forests in these desert areas, or areas that were not bearing much fruit. And I found that they had a lot of problems with animals eating down their forests, like roving bands of goats. And I saw that a lot of the problems, obviously, was that they had to use indigenous types of crops or plants to grow, but a lot of it was, I felt, that Mother Nature really grows the earth from the inside out, and man isn't as intuitive as, say, the animals, who are more in tune with Mother Nature, to build something like a forest. I feel that animals build habitats, which are basically the great outdoors, and through the great outdoors and their habitat building, they procreate the earth with the seeds and the fruits of life that we then can partake of to have products and energy and food and all the things we need, and fresh water from the growing of green plant life, which brings photosynthesis and fresh water and clean air. I think the animals are in charge of building their habitats, from the smallest insect or rodent on up to the biggest animal. An elephant, I've seen elephants dig holes in the earth quite big, and then on the other side is a mountain. I think there's some kind of method to their madness, and they know exactly what they're doing, and the procreation or shaping of our planet is best left to the natural life, which is more instinctive life and more in tune with the natural cycles of the earth. And I think that what the British showed through their study, their work of afforestation, was that the animals will eat the trees if they're hungry, and a goat can eat a whole tree. So my focus has been not so much afforestation or reforestation, but education about the importance of not deforesting the earth, and the importance of the forests, insofar as bringing us everything we need and not the farmlands, and the importance of stopping desertification, but also in stimulating, regenerating, nourishing, caring for, loving, and sending positive thoughts to the animal kingdom and not letting the animal kingdom go. If the goats are well fed, they won't eat the trees. So in my path of starting pilot programs in various spots in Africa, Southern California, and Nepal, I focused on feeding the rodents, which burrow under the soil and cleanse, fertilize, and oxygenate the soil. I also focused on the birds, which do a lot of migratory traveling and seemed instinctively to be aware of climate and sowing of seeds and the things going on in the upper regions of our planet, the heights. I did a lot of study that working from the mountaintops, which are closer to where the weather may be forming, has a lot of influence on maybe affecting the climate, as opposed to the lower valleys, which are different. And what I found is that when we hung fruit in the trees, which was meant for the birds to have nectar, that some of the bigger primates, like the monkeys, would eat the fruit in Africa. And some of the giraffes and elephants might get fed, and they're important to the building of habitats. So that was something I took note of. Also, I realized that in the barren soils, there's no forage for the goats and the horses and the hippopotamuses and all kinds of big animals who forage on herbs and grains and stalks and lettuce and things like that. So in the coming year, for our business plan, we've decided to expand from feeding the birds and feeding the rodent population and planting flowers, which is important to the bees and the butterflies. We have decided to focus also on nurturing the larger animals. And in doing so, we're planning to put fruits in all the trees, hang them, and hopefully get donations from supermarkets, and also spend our own money and donations to our charity to buy fruits in places like Africa and Nepal, and in the conservancy areas in Southern California and the deserts of the western United States, and start hanging oranges and pomegranates and citrus fruits and apples in the trees and coconuts, and throwing corn and bird seed and grains on the ground for the birds and bees and gophers, and of course putting up the bird feeders. We're also focusing in Africa on planting lots of grain and herb and seed and lettuce and things like that, so that a natural growth of forage for the feeding of the animal kingdom will come back. If the animal kingdom are fed and there's forage and lettuce and herb and grain on the ground and fruits hung in the trees for the primates who are larger animals who can reach up that high, I think that the tending and building of habitats will come back very strongly, and then the earth will be procreated and seeded and multiplied correctly by the right minds who are evolved in that direction and have that intrinsically in them to do that kind of work. Whereas the humans, in my opinion, are there as caretakers, but the animals actually are the ones who would do the rebuilding and restocking and replenishing and sustaining work of the earth. It's my opinion that it's important to take care of the animals. The birds and the bees and the gophers is what we've been focusing on, but we feel that it's important to think of the elephants, the giraffes, the monkeys, the horses, the oxen, the goats, and to think of forage and herb and grasses and all kinds of mixture of lettuces and things like that into the soil, and improving the soil through the gophers, as we've learned is possible, and then building in the soil up for the larger animals and putting fruits and nuts maybe in the trees or on the ground for the animals that can reach higher or that live upper in the trees. I hope that's exciting. We're planning that for 2016.